Recording in progress. Okay, great. I'm gonna do the sync. Okay, do it just like Johnny does it, but do it like way better than he normally does. Okay. All right. Three, two, one. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. That's gonna be perfect. You know what? I think you smashed that. Although I have no way of knowing. So,
It it felt to me like I smashed it.
I think you did, and I think you should. Well, I was about to say give yourself a round of applause, but that'll mess up the sync. Hello, welcome to the podcast. I don't normally do the introduction, as you can probably tell, but
Do you want me to do it?
yeah, go on.
Ba-ba-bum-ba-ba-bum-ba-ba-bum-ba-ba-bum. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and those who don't conform to the binary gender spectrum. It's another happy sunny day in Depressionsville as we speak to our favorite sad person. It's Make Paddy Happy.
I like that yours is actionable. Yours is make Paddy happy, which is the show's called Making Paddy Happy, but make sounds it's more of like an imperative order, isn't it? Like
Immediately.
it's like well, I mean, you're the first, I believe, the first guest we've ever had on the show, and maybe when it's a guest, it should be make Paddy happy because it could be like a weekly thing where it's like, now it's your turn. Can you fucking do it?
The challenge.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's
Like
the only instruction sent.
That's just an email. It's like a jury duty.
Yeah,
You could just get a letter and a Zoom link on
yeah.
the letter that you have to type in manually.
Yeah, exactly. All out of newspaper clippings and bits of old wood. Like, well, yeah. Hello. I'm Paddy, whose voice you will recognise, unless this is your first episode, in which case you are in for a doozy of a toozy. It's. I think that's what people sometimes say about.
A doozy of a toozy.
I think
To me, both of those I think are like nicknames for pooing.
that's the problem. You see, I've gone in too hard too soon with with my new metaphor. See, Johnny's not here, so I get to now. I'm off the leash. It's Paddy unleashed.
Yeah.
Which
Paddy's
is
going to go for it, and I'm going to be like, how do I hold this together?
this is where we reveal that I've been happy the whole time. I'm just playing with his emotions. So yes, this is Making Paddy Happy. It's a podcast that you often listen to, except for some of you, in which case, hello, I'm Paddy, and this unusually isn't Johnny. Johnny is what's the word? A dad. So he's doing that. We've missed like I think 2 or 3 episodes on the trot, which was predicted when we started this season, where Johnny said it's going to be 13 episodes long, and I said I bet it'll be 9, and I think I'm so far correct. So I'd like to introduce you to our friend and wonderful compatriot and sometimes collaborator and best bud extraordinaire, storyteller, cool guy, theatre boss, cocktail friend. It's my boozy buddy with the lovely tubby. um, it's everyone's favourite star, Mr. James Rowland.
Woo!
Here it comes. Everyone's got to try that noise on the podcast. That's the other thing. Is it's
To try
Paddy's
the air
favourite
horn
noise. Yeah.
My air horn just then, because I think I'm actually all right at it, but mine sounded more like a very old car struggling to make it over a hill.
I think that's a metaphor for our everyday as
Yeah,
well.
what life's like.
Yeah, exactly. Although neither of us have the disadvantage of age. Like we're both still. I don't know about you, but maybe this is a defense mechanism. But I always think you're old when you're 80, and that's when it's rad. Like that at that point, you're like, oh, I'm old now. I'm old. Like now I
Yeah,
can do whatever I want.
yeah.
Not in a nasty way, but you know.
No, well, I definitely feel like if I think actually I've sort of pencil marked 70 as mine,
Yeah.
as being like post 70, I think I'm just going to try all the drugs.
Yeah.
Like
Sweet.
pre 70, like
Yeah.
heroin and crack and crystal meth all feel like a bit much. But post 70,
Yeah.
I'm like, we're sort of on a victory lap now.
Well, I think you're right. I think any drug in which there's a TV show that has more than 2 seasons about it, like specifically the drug, I'm like, I probably shouldn't try that one.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, I think I think I'm at the point in my life where I've been offered most of them, and
Hmm.
I'm quite a shy
Hmm.
drug boy.
Hmm.
In that I smoke a bit of weed, and that's all fine, but I haven't done it in a little while.
Hmm.
And I've tried some of the hits.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not very, for someone who is probably the exact personality that would be very susceptible to peer pressure. I'm quite good at being like, no, I'm quite scared of that.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't do any drugs at all. Like maybe had a couple of tokes on other people's spliffs
mm,
until I was in my 30s.
mm,
And I've had a lovely time sporadically
mm,
taking some drugs since then.
yeah,
But I think that one of the things that I have noticed, and also people I know who've taken a lot more drugs than I have,
mm,
I actually think that not doing it very much makes it nicer.
mm,
Um, because I think like you get diminishing returns, that, like just generally, regardless of what the drugs are, which is
yeah.
why saving up for 70, saving
There
it
you
all
go.
up.
Saving up for your drugs. That's the how the heroes do it. That's the Wire. That's what the Wire's about, isn't it?
The Wire's not about us.
Oh, is the oh, I thought that we were quite Baltimore, but maybe we're not. Is the Wire in the Wire?
Yeah.
Is it the this is a very visual thing I'm doing. Is it the thing you wear under your shirt so that the police can catch other people?
Oh no, it's not, have you not seen it?
I've not seen it at all. I'm not very good
Oh,
at telly.
cool. Yeah, no, I've not seen. I've not like seen Breaking Bad or The Sopranos, but I did see The Wire, and
Mm.
I've actually watched it all through twice. The Wire is a wire tap, so it's phone tapping.
Oh, so it's not a. Are you wearing a wire? It's a. Is this phone wired?
Yeah, exactly. So the first season, especially, but then all of they make it sort of thematically work in all the seasons that it's really important to like tap
Tap
people's phones
phones.
or yeah,
Cool.
and like
Sounds great, man.
it sort of ties it in. But then, as with quite a lot of great like cultural things, the
Mm.
name becomes irrelevant because of its iconicism.
Mm.
Um, doesn't it? It's like like the Beatles.
Yeah.
Like you're just like, oh, they're the Beatles.
Yeah. It's
Like,
nothing to
like
do with Beatles anymore.
yeah, you don't have the name is irrelevant. You like whether the Beatles is a good or a bad name for a band is irrelevant. So the Beatles, the
Mm.
same as The Wire, The Soprano. I mean, The Sopranos makes sense because he's called Tony Soprano. But even then, there's a bit of like, because I've not seen it much, but I know it's played by the big guy, and he's a mafia dude. Have you seen The Sopranos?
No, I've not. It's another one that I like. I talk to Johnny about this quite often because Johnny's quite TV literate.
Right.
And I think part of that was like early fatherhood, but also
Hmm.
he just knows quite a lot about stuff, and he's one of those people. And maybe this is ADHD, maybe I'm wrongly attributing this, but he often, if he hears something that he doesn't know about or finds interesting, he will zone out of the conversation to look it up on Wikipedia and learn everything he can about it,
Mm.
but long through when the conversation's passed. But then the next time it's brought up, he will have then watched it, or he will have educated himself in a way that quite often I'll be like, oh, I've not seen that, and then that's probably where it ends for Paddy, unless someone's really like, I'm trying to be better at. Oh mate, I think it was a conversation you and I had or something like that. That's like, oh no, it might have been in a show you did, but the when someone recommends you something,
Yeah.
when you actually do it,
Yeah.
it's a huge. But even if you think the thing sucks, it's a huge boost to your friendship. Like
Yeah.
I find it a lot. I mean, I tell people there's a lot of stuff that I know I recommend to people that of course they're not going to fucking do, because it's
Mm.
like I talk to Johnny quite a lot at the moment about K drama. I'm recommending
Mm.
K drama left, right, and center. What am I doing?
Oh,
I'm reckless.
I've
Like
heard the words K drama come out of your mouth so
so
often
many
in the
fucking
last six
times.
months.
Yeah,
But it's quite because we've been seeing a lot of each other,
yeah.
and also because we've been seeing a lot of each other, seeing a lot of each other with other people as well. It's not
Mm,
just like I think that's sort of how our friendship has changed, actually. Maybe in the
Yeah,
last,
totally.
it's like we probably see about the same amount of each other alone as we used to, but
Mm.
now we do a lot more socializing with other people. And I would say I have heard I've only ever heard the words K drama spoken by you. And I would now say I've probably heard it 1,000 plus times.
Yeah,
It's
too
really,
many.
but but again, I think it's quite comforting, isn't it? It's like a level of like, I'm like, because like when you're talking to people, I think post pandemic, it's even bigger than it was before.
Mm.
But like one of the fail safe, like conversational, this is something that we can do to talk about is talking about what telly you're watching.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
beca- like I think it probably was a thing before, but now it's like the number one go to above even like sort of like how's work and stuff like that,
Mm.
which because everybody knows all shit.
It's awful. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so whereas telly, you're like, oh, we can talk about telly because basically everybody watches some sort of telly.
Mm.
And so I've heard you say K drama a lot.
Yeah,
It's
and
nice.
it's become sort of, I don't know, my thing that I know no one will do, but I'm waiting for the one day that someone says, "Hey, I got really into Mr. Sunshine," and I can be
Mm,
like, "Cool." Like I'm actually I don't even care if you enjoyed it or not. The fact that you did that
mm,
is just really interesting because like it's like when someone reads you a book, lends you a book, or buys you. Reading a book is lovely, but like if someone gives you a book, or if someone,
mm,
I don't know, any kind of recommendation. I've got a mate called Connor O'Toole who is a lovely, lovely man, and Connor was like I hadn't seen him in a very long time. He lives near Johnny, and last time I was up in Glasgow, Connor and I ended up hanging out for a while whilst Johnny was doing baby bedtime. And he was like, "Oh, what are you playing at the moment?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm playing a lot of Hearthstone, which is like an online card game."
mm,
And then the next day, he sent me a text being like, "So I've got Hearthstone. What do I do now?" And I was like,
mm,
"Oh, okay." I was like, "Do the tutorial." And then he sent me like an invite on the game, and he was like, "Do you want to just play and you can kind of teach me?" And we ended
mm.
up playing for hours, and we were chatting on WhatsApp in our ears at the same time, and it was really nice because I was like, no, really, like you're gonna come and play my weird
Mm.
card game with me, and then I did the same with him with Tetris because
Ah,
like Connor is so into Tetris. He got Johnny into it because they both have ADHD, and Connor was like, "This is
mm.
really fucking helping me out." Johnny's now a fucking fiend at it. But it's really
Oh,
nice. You
so
can just sit down and be like, yeah, like he runs an emulator on his computer, and you both have these tiny little NES controllers that we use, and it's like, oh, it's so
ah.
fucking cool. Um,
Well,
I don't know.
Tetris is a fascinating one. Our other friend who is called Johnny Chiodini,
Mm,
did a TED talk based on their what do you call it? They did like they are board game and computer games journalists, and they did
mm,
a TEDx talk about mental health and computer games, and
mm,
Tetris was the example that they used in it of because it's sort of the most it's like the acme of why computer games are good for mental health
mm.
because it's so clear where the dopamine is.
Yeah,
It's like
totally.
you
Obvious
get like a
hits, kind of.
little
Yeah,
yeah, exactly, little dopamine hit by clearing a line, and then like a big dopamine hit if you get a Tetris.
yeah.
And like
It's
yeah,
very achievable, and it's quite easy to pick up and quite easy to get used to. I mean, it's like, yeah, you're bang on. It's sort of the poster boy for because I don't know. I think part of why I really like computer games in regards to my mental health is like I like playing games in which there's a right and a wrong way of doing
mm,
things, and
mm,
so you get good at something, and then if you solve the puzzle, it's like, cool, you got the one answer to this puzzle, and then it gives you a little, like, well done pat on the head, and you get some bonus bananas or some bollocks. Like,
mm,
I think that's great because so much of what, you and I both work in the same industry, so much of what we do every single day, and social interaction and our own sort of struggles with our own place in the world, everything's subjective.
mm,
Whether we're doing the right thing, whether that joke was funny, whether this narrative works, whether the play was good, whether like whatever.
mm.
And it's really nice to have something that's just like, yep, that was it. Like
Yeah,
that's a Tetris.
yeah,
That's the name of the game. Um,
yeah,
so I've started to, and it's really interesting. Like especially since the start of pandemic, I've started to shy away from games that ask me to make difficult choices, because When they're games that traditionally I find really interesting, that are like, hey, we exist somewhere in the between of the morally
Yeah,
grey,
yeah.
and it's like, are you going to save the town or are you going to save the train? And it's like,
Sure.
well, I don't know, man. Like, I didn't
This
come here for the
trolley,
trolley.
it
Yeah,
has a
it's
problem.
mate. There's a game actually that I think was released a few days ago that's called Trolley Problem Inc. I think it's by
Oh god, that sounds
dude.
like a nightmare.
Man, it's by Yogscast Games, and I'm gonna buy it because I watched a review of it earlier on today, and it is just trolley problem after trolley problem
Oh
after trolley, like
no.
hard, and I'm like, this will fucking ruin
End
me.
me. Yeah.
But I think it might go some way in starting to restore my faith in my own ability to make decisions, and be like, sometimes you've just got to make a decision,
Yeah,
and
like sort of like a exposure therapy.
totally, because like absolutely crippled by indecision is
Yeah.
what leads to so many of the problems in my life, where it's not like oh, I don't care, go either way. It's like the most basic fucking
Yeah, you get stuck, right? And there are loads of different ways of sort of getting through. Like, so our friend Kat, who's training to be a therapist, was talking about Gestalt theory. She talked to you about that.
I know she said the word gestalt, but
Gestalt, and it's the idea. I think it's like, because all the different psychotherapeutic ways of sort of dealing with stuff are all just one approach.
right,
And Gestalt is based on the idea that everything is cycles, and when stuff is bad, it's because you get stuck. And so
yeah,
it's
that
like
makes sense.
you get stuck in like ticking between two steps in a natural cycle. And I think that's like, I also read Katie Wicks has got a book that apparently is very good that I've not read. It's got cake in the title. I can't remember, but I read
Okay,
she wrote a beautiful article in the Guardian. Guardian?
in the Gardigan, you know it.
In the Guardian.
In the Gardigan, it's my favorite.
Guardian.
Oh, I read the Gardigan.
It is, yeah, that's what it's called now. And it was a beautiful article. She talked about being, I think, very, very depressed, and breaking things down into their component parts. So, like, if getting out of bed is too much, or if like you're finding yourself not getting out of bed, then you break it down into pulling your covers back, sitting up, pulling your legs over the side,
Right,
standing
okay.
up. Like, you can do each one of those things. I can't get out of bed, but I can pull the covers off me. I can't get out of bed, but I can sit up.
And
I
now
can't
you're
get
in a
out of
different
bed.
situation, so you can reassess
Yeah.
whether or not
And I
you can
can't
achieve the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. I can't get out of bed, but now I'm sat on the edge of my bed. And then you're like, oh, it's actually now easier for me to get out of bed than it was for me to stay in it.
That is absolutely fucking true, because I force myself to do certain things because, like, I don't know, it's like often before I have a plan, I will leave the house because I'm like, well, now I'm outside, and
Yeah,
to get
I have
outside,
to do something.
yeah, and it's the same when I get out of bed, like, I will put on clothes even if I'm planning on going back to bed in a minute. I'm like, well, now I'm wearing clothes. Like, I suppose I should probably take it from there. Like,
That's
maybe
like
that's-
yeah. I guess that's you. That sounds. I hadn't thought of this about you, but like based on like naturally drawn to sort of like exposure therapy, because that in itself is quite. You're like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just in bed. I can't get out. You're like, okay, how do I fix this? It's like, I'll be outside and then I'll have to make a plan. And it's like, even though you'd never said that to me. When you said it, I was like, of course that's what Paddy does, because I've received a text from you, like many times, being like, dude, are you about? Because suddenly, and it's like, even though you won't be like, because I made myself go out the house before I had a plan, so I had to make a plan.
Yeah,
you can tell that that's where like that now makes sense of what that is.
dude, it's quite a good system, and it's where my catchphrase "long shot" comes from, because I will force myself into any given situation, and sometimes it'll be like, well, I still haven't got a plan and I'm just walking around, so I'll get the tube and be like, okay, where am I going? And then I'll get off at, I don't know, I'll go into Soho and be like, well, now I'm here, and then I'll just text a few people and be like, long shot, are you in Soho immediately?
Yeah.
And 1 times out of 10, someone will be like, yeah, I'm about to see a play, do you want to come? And then it's like, cool, my plan's now sorted. And if not, you make your own fun, and it's fine. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
I think
also you're already by that point you are already out, right? And like so you've sort of accomplished it by the time
yeah.
you've got there.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm mobile, and then I've overcome the hardest part of the day, which is doing anything with my day.
Yeah, that's
Um,
really good.
yeah, and it's sort of it. I mean, I find it the same with like I don't know. I think you and I were talking about this yesterday. Funny enough, it's like sometimes on stage or even in writing sessions or stuff like that, I just hit record on a thing because
Mm.
then it's like, well, I've effectively started a timer and I'm gonna have to accept that this is now set in stone. So I'm just gonna start playing the guitar, or I'm just gonna start talking, or I'm just gonna start. It's why podcasting really works for me, and why
Mm.
like it's like Johnny and I do quite like we've had a couple of interviews today already, and I think
Mm.
I like interviews more than Johnny, not out of self-interest, but because I think, well, Johnny he's normally holding one or two children, but also, like, I'll just talk, and odds are
Mm.
something will happen.
It's
I
all
don't,
right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like I don't have to prepare really, or like it's quite easy to
But
just
then
let my mouth
part
run.
of that not needing to prepare is because you've done that a lot. I remember, like,
Mm,
I don't, not a huge fan, but when I was a kid, I used to read a lot of like theatre biographies and stuff,
mm,
because I wanted to be an actor, and I sort of like really enjoyed, all of these people's life. And Peter Hall, who was the artistic director of the RSC, like founded the RSC, I think, and then was artistic director of the National,
mm.
never spoke with notes.
Right,
So like wouldn't any speech that he'd do, he'd always extemporize. And I
right.
think it's a muscle, right? Like it's like probably and like his speeches were just as good as people who wrote them down, but much better and much more connected to an audience because he wasn't reading.
Yeah.
Um because you train your brain to do that, right? Like you train, yeah, and you've now spent so like you must have done like your 10,000 hours in
Oh yeah.
extemporizing.
Yeah. Just like
Which
fucking bollocks, mate. Like.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not like a transferable skill, but it is a skill that you've really got.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, totally. Well, yeah, because it's hard. It's hard to, yeah, it's hard to monetize that skill sometimes, but but it
that's what they
does.
say. It is hard to monetize bollocks.
Yeah, exactly. And yet somehow here we are doing a free show on a Tuesday afternoon.
I
But
tell you
yeah,
what, it is fantastic. Like, I mean, speaking about getting out of bed and stuff, like I've recently not been getting out of bed really much at all.
right.
The last month have been really bad, and
Yeah,
so even doing this, you're like, it's that I think it's what you're talking about. It's like the immersion therapy. It's just going like, and also I knew that I would be fine to do this as
yeah.
long as I was doing it.
Well,
Like,
totally.
yeah,
It sometimes requires a bit of a push. Sorry, I keep referring to earlier conversations we had, but it was a conversation we had the other day that I think you and I are quite good for each other, in that to use an example from the other day, I think you didn't really want to do anything, and neither did
mm,
I, and so I just came to your house,
yeah,
and then it was like, well, I've come all the way here, and you have to
it's
do something
happening
about
now.
that. Like,
Yeah,
I've just
yeah,
got on a
yeah,
train because I'm like, well, fuck it, I'll just go to his house. In the worst case scenario, James goes, I don't want to come outside, and also, like, I've got to wait for the person to arrive and be like, cool, well, I'm here, I can stay here, or I can go to the pub.
yeah.
Like, um,
It's been. I mean, that actually, I think you said as well. It's a very effective way for me. I'm sure for some people it would be like might make things not good
mm,
because they might be like, oh, I still can't do this,
yeah,
and in the face, and now I'm letting someone down.
yeah.
But certainly for me, and you said the same was the case for you, is you're like in that scenario, just like something just clicks in your brain. You're like, oh, it's go time.
Yeah, totally. And I think if I really didn't want to do it, that would have already been made clear.
Yeah,
But it comes back to the indecision thing of like,
yeah,
if someone's outside my house or if someone's at the pub nearby, like, I'll just go and do that.
yeah.
Even if I have, even if I'm feeling awful, odds are I'll probably feel a bit better. Like,
And it is like, I mean, in the midst of the shit,
mm,
as like you have been are and frequently feel and deter me, like it's important. it's not important at all. Nothing's important.
Nothing matters.
But,
No, that's
but
the
it
truth,
is,
isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it is nice. It is nice to be reminded of the fact that, like, inherently you do, even when you feel like you don't at all, still have like self-protecting mechanisms in you, that
Mm,
you're like, some instincts in you still like care for yourself enough
mm,
that like it's just about finding the trigger for it, and then you're
yeah.
like, oh no, I'm actually doing something instead of absolutely nothing, and I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah. Well, it was I hope you don't mind me using this example as well, and do tell me if you do, and I will obviously cut this bit.
Mm,
But I remember when you first came onto antidepressants, and
mm.
I'm well versed in pills, because even before I was allowed to take, sorry, it's a slight tangent already. Even before I was allowed to take them, I had a friend called Oriel, who her dad was a monk,
Cool.
not in the like
Is
Chris.
did they know about it?
Yeah. They were, yeah. That was a surprise to everyone. But this guy, and he used to go up to monasteries in the mountains and stuff up in Asia, and was just like a very spiritual, kind man.
Mm.
And he heard that I was going through a bit of rubbish. I must have been 14 or something like this. This now sounds darker than I think the story's meant to. But he brought me back what was definitely a placebo.
Mm.
But it was probably something like St. John's Wort, actually, or like some kind of thing. But there were these little.
St. John's Wort is not a placebo, baby.
Well, that one's real, isn't it? But it definitely
Yeah,
did something to me. And
yeah.
he brought me back these little pills that were like they're like, oh, we're running out of time, this meeting will end in 10 minutes, upgrade now. Well, we can wrap up in the next 10. That's grand. You give these little pills that were like blessed by
Yeah.
another monk, I imagine.
Mm.
And I started taking them, and I think it's kind of like my stepmom used to give me rescue remedy. Did you ever have that?
I know of it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if I've ever had it, but homeopathy has been around
That's the thing.
my life.
Is like, yeah, likewise, and like we've actually talked about it on the show before. This sort of like it's technically microdosing tiny bits of booze,
Mm.
apparently. So
Well,
yeah,
it's basically nothing. However, I've really turned around on this. My little brother is going through a super rough patch with his mental health, but he's
mm,
experienced like a huge amount of. My brother, I have to get out of the habit of calling him my little brother. Doesn't need that qualifier.
yeah,
He's a brilliant, intelligent, articulate, grown-up man,
yeah,
who also has severe mental health problems. And his way of dealing with that, which isn't that dissimilar, I think, to what you were talking about with Johnny, in terms of needing to research and needing to know and like wanting to pull in the knowledge. Like Matt
yeah,
has researched so much stuff. Like, I think basically he is sort of almost qualified to be a therapist.
yeah,
He'd just have to do some exams because he's read so much about it. And I talk a lot to him and about the stuff because he's fascinating in terms of the things, but also just as talking to you now, as it always has been talking to you about mental health. And it's really relieving when you feel like you're on the same page.
mm,
A place that we got to is the placebo effect is amazing. It's a miracle,
mm,
and it works.
mm,
And so I want to try and find a new word for it, because the placebo effect feels like it's intrinsically negative, a bit like the word manipulation.
mm.
It's
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, okay,
like manipulation. The root of the word manipulation just means to hold in your hands, manipulate.
mm,
And I think like a process that we're doing all the time is, trying to get people to behave in certain ways, and it's not negative. Like performance is manipulation, and it's not necessarily negative. However, like the placebo effect, not to get too sidetracked in my linguistics, sounds like it is tied to something, because it's always been like, it's just a placebo, it doesn't
yeah,
work. And you're like, no, if it works, it works.
yeah,
So if you are taking a pill and it does something that helps, even if that pill is just poo,
yeah,
like just eat a bit of paper and that
mm,
does something positive, you're like, that's still happening.
yeah, totally. That's, I mean, yeah, you're so bang, because that has such a negative connotation, and like, I don't know, it's like a tangent from a tangent, but
Yeah.
Brian.
Oh yeah, we've still got the story about the pills.
Oh yeah, totally. Brian Blessed did some kind of thing where I used to get told, my family are pretty liberal with swearing, but when I used to get frustrated and I'd swear, often there was a bit of a kibosh put on it. And then as I grew up, it was more acceptable and it wasn't encouraged, but it was interesting that my dad sort of was like, no, there's a time and a place, and I think this is it. And then I watched a thing with Brian Blessed where he was put in an ice bath, and in one round of the ice bath, he was allowed to swear, and in the other round, he wasn't. And they monitored his stress levels and stuff like this. When he was allowed to swear, every time he swore, the process became more bearable, and it released something in his brain that was like, well, when I'm threatened by something, I go, oh, jeez, fucking Christ, or whatever, you hit your thumb. The swearing releases that tiny little thing. And I wonder if that's like, there's something in that, in being like, well, there's a time and a place for everything, and you're right, if it works, it works. And it's like, I don't know, when I hit my arm, I still do what my dad used to do when I was a kid. Benny bashed herself the other day, and I, no idea why it just suddenly happened. I went, oh, give it a rub, 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 like that. And it's what my dad used to do, and he used to rub it. And I used to think it was just a lovely little, like you say, placebo effect that my dad did. But actually, when you rub it, you're overstimulating all the other shit going on in that area, so it has to give part of its focus to the sensation of being rubbed, so it relieves some of the sensation of being in pain. And it's like, that works. Like, I think of it as a silly little thing. But anyway, long story short, been on loads of drugs, took those pills. They definitely worked, because I was like, cool, a monk gave me some pills and now I'm a bit happier. Been on loads of drugs. Then you started drugs, having not done them for a very long time. At all, even.
Never.
And
I was prescribed Prozac when I was a teenager, but I took one dose and then flushed the whole lot down the loo.
Yeah, Prozac's an odd one for me as well. But that, yeah, you started on these, and we were at the theatre. You came and met me for a beer or something like that, and you were about to see a play, and you were basically like, I'm freaking the fuck out. And I didn't know if it was the right or wrong thing to do, but I was like, go and see the play. I had no idea if you'd like the play. Actually, I was pretty certain you might not. But it gave an activity for an hour, and I was like, I'll be here afterwards, then we can go for a beer. And you went and had a panic attack in a theatre. So all in all, it was a real victory for...
Yeah, I tell you what, and like, I think I felt anxious and sort of like mild panicky moments in watching things before, but I've never had the experience of being like having a full-on panic attack while watching a show.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, it's such a weird, I wouldn't even say, like, obviously I wouldn't choose to do it again, but it's quite an interesting experience to have had, because there was some really, like, I sort of remember the story, but I really, really vividly remember some sequences in it, like with some like some lights and some movement. I guess it's like the fight or flight state that you're in that place is like, what's salient? And you're like, a lighting change and stuff that is non-verbal is really important to you right now because it might kill you or something. I don't know. Yeah. Well, it's sort of fascinating.
It's fucking fascinating, I think. So yeah, I think that you're so right. A rebranding of that word, and also, I don't know, like, if it works for you, it works. Is just a really nice takeaway to have for a lot of things.
And it's also like, belief is such a fundamental part of it. It's like sort of started to tie stuff together for me in terms of like why religion is such a fundamental sort of pull or drive that people have. Is like, is actually because belief is like, somehow our brains, like, I guess because everything is going on in our brains, all of our sensations, everything, like all of our nervous system is sort of being routed through there. It's all about that. So all of our experience is sort of just a thing that we're doing in our brain.
Yeah.
And so if you believe something hard enough, it becomes real.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And it's awful because I don't believe that, because you go like, well, again, empirically, like, God doesn't exist, I don't think. Like, that's not what it is. And it's like homeopathy is obviously bollocks, but you're also like, but it's not bollocks if it helps, is it?
Yeah, absolutely, because that is having the desired effect. As long as you're not hurting someone with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very hard to hurt somebody with, like a pint of water with 0.1% of booze in it.
Just a bit of arsenic in it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a drop, mate. It's just your body will remember
It's
it.
not. That is not gonna hurt you.
Yeah,
Even if it was arsenic, it still wouldn't. Like a whole pint of water with like a tiny, tiny, tiny drop of arsenic, you'd be like, "That's fine."
I was going to talk to you about this later, but James and I are going to be writing a musical together,
Yeah.
and I don't even know if this will fit in it, but there was a song I never got off the ground with Johnny because I don't think he liked the idea, but it was called "I'm Gonna Kill You with Kindness and Poison."
Yeah.
And Johnny was just like, "But what's the joke?" And I was like, "The joke is right because you think it's
I'm gonna
one
kill you
thing."
with.
We can't,
Yeah.
like it's the poison that does the killing, and he's like, no, I get it. It's just there's not a whole song in that, mate. And I'm like, I always believe that there's more to a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But now the recording is either going to kick us off in a minute, but I have a belief. Right, here you go. Here's one for you.
Yeah.
On Zoom, I think if it's 2 people, it goes. Nah, you know what, mate? It's fine.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's roll
Let's
the
see.
dice.
I mean, we've apparently got less than a minute, but if
Yeah.
you don't mind, this will probably be a really good point to say we're going to move on to Patreon, where we always do the second part of the episode. I hadn't told James this,
I thought this whole thing was for Patreon.
oh no, God no! Oh no, this is public consumption, bruv. This is the forum.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on over to Patreon, which you can go to patreon.com/. Wow, look at those boys. What are they doing? Probably slash Johnny and the Baptist. I don't do the Patreon. Well, I do actually. I just don't know the link.
You can Google, just right into your search bar,
Yeah,
Patreon, Johnny and the Baptist.
and you'll find it. And for as little as £5 a month, you